Well, I appreciate the crowd coming out. Hope everybody's having a good show. So they asked me to do a thing on opening a museum, and so for the basis of my talk, don't. Okay. No, kidding. Yep. Session over. If I had a mic, I'd drop it. So I brought a lot of slides. I actually have 104 slides, but there's not, I'm just going to be talking and blowing through them. It's just cool pictures that probably not a lot of people have seen. So I'll tell you the story of how the National Videogame Museum, they said how to start a museum. I still don't know. Okay. We got lucky. A lot of things fell into place. There's no tried and true formula. But I will tell you how we came to be at the National Videogame Museum. So you see these handsome gentlemen up top, especially the guy in the back with the chubby face. About, yeah, right. Oh, hey, you know some people there. Yep. And in front and center is my partner, Sean. Next to him is Joe Santulli, Sean Kelly. And the three of us were the ones that started a show called Classic Gaming Expo. And that was 1999 in Las Vegas. And the story is the guy who ran the World of Atari shows, which were big back in the 80s, decided to do another show in Las Vegas at the Boardwalk Hotel and Casino. And he did that in 1998. The following year, there was a little bit of debate whether he wanted to turn World of Atari into a mini E3 showing modern stuff. We didn't feel that that was the right move. And as it turned out, the guy had an accident on his motorcycle. He couldn't do a show anyway. And so we kind of took the reins and we changed it to Classic Gaming Expo to encompass all classic gaming and not just Atari. As much as I love Atari, you guys know. So that was how we got started. And CGE 99 was at the Plaza Hotel in Las Vegas. Did I jump 2 slides? So just a couple of quick things. So this is the type of stuff that we all wish we would see at a show today for the prices it was going for. Very cheap. You can see like just crazy amounts of stuff. One of our vendors. And we had special guests the first year, Ralph Baer, the father of video games. What was very unique about CGE is every year we would have 30, 40, depending, 2 years we did it in California, we'd have 50 and 60 alumni. David Crane, Becky Heineman, you name it, they were there. These are all the pioneers of the gaming industry. And what's kind of unique is it was so grassroots, I guess is the word, that we never paid for any of them. So all 40 guests that came paid their own way to fly to Vegas and put themselves up in a hotel and just to be at our show and talk at panels. And certainly that wouldn't fly today, but
we got free admission.
You did get free admission, and we had an alumni dinner. So that was our big thing. We held a dinner on Friday night just for them to get together and reminisce and reconnect with old friends, and the public wasn't allowed. But it was a very much a family type atmosphere. So it was a lot of fun. Some more through the years, Telegames USA, all that Dyna 2-in-1 systems are worth probably big money today. And we did all kinds of events like Video Game Jeopardy. My partner Joe's doing that. And we had music. And again, this is 99. We ran the show from 99. Our last official year was 2012, which I handed out this program to you guys. I found a box of them, so I figured you'd get a kick out of it, just to show how it was going on back then. B&C Computer Visions with all their Atari stuff. It was just all crazy stuff. And television. Here we started getting into some Nintendo nonsense there, you know. But, you know, again, this is just tubs of stuff that, like, you just wouldn't see really today in this condition, sealed games and a lot of stuff. Atari2600.com was a huge vendor back in the day. He just had always the craziest, most amazing stuff. Now that's me. So the only reason I threw that there is to show you that we like to party at the show. And my partner Joe took that picture, and he said his caption was, "When John Hardie has his face on, you know it's party time." So Yeah, so we always like to have parties. You know, we always had a Saturday night after show party, and we'd all get rip roaring drunk. And but you know, it was a lot of work. We needed to decompress. So the museum spawned from our show, and it was really just us sending parts of our collection out to Vegas and storing them. And you know, three of us had been collecting individually since probably the early to mid 80s, before anybody thought to collect this type of stuff. Dumpster diving, stuff was cheap, nobody cared about it. And we also had a great compliment because while I was mostly an Atari guy, my partner Joe was everything, and then Sean was like Vectrex and a television. So we had a good complement of materials. We also had some good friends who had great collections that would bring them and put them on display every year. So we had Rick Morgan, who had like one of the top handheld collections in the world, would lug all his stuff out. Chris Romero, he had an incredible Vectrex collection, all kinds of kiosks and crazy stuff. These guys would all bring their stuff to Vegas just to put it on display for people to see. And you can see this is one of the very early ones. By the time we stopped doing it, the show, the museum had occupied probably about 5,000 square feet of just stuff on tables end to end. You could walk up. Hopefully you would gentle if you touched it, but it was very accessible like that, right? And again, this is one of the smaller, probably earlier ones that we did. Uh, so this is handhelds. Again, we talked about, you know, different sections of the museum and things on display. Just jam as much stuff as we could on tables. You can kind of see the length of, you know, of stuff and all kinds of memorabilia and books. You name it, it was there. Atari kiosk, again, a big ape guy. That's actually in the National Videogame Museum right now, with it all set up. And here's some of those handhelds. And we would just stack them up as, you know, again, as much as we could fit. Puppy Pong is in the museum today, but again, accessible. You could walk right up and look at it and, you know, get hands on, hopefully not too much. And more handhelds. And this is, again, going through the years of how, you know, how we got, and here's some Nintendo stuff we started getting into. Again, people really bought into the idea. And by this time, we had shipped most of our stuff. Our wives were thrilled. Get this crap out of the house, you know, out of the garage, out of the basement. And we had 3 storage units in Vegas. You know, but the big downside was it was once a year the stuff was on display. So E3, 2004. Well, let me preface by saying we had been sneaking into E3 as media or press for years, you know, and always just grabbing armfuls of swag and all kinds of stuff, right? And, you know, as much as we could do. I mean, I don't know how we did it. I have some pictures somewhere of us lugging like shopping bags of stuff around. And the great story is my buddy Don, who's here with us, back in the booth. Sony was throwing out shirts left and right. You just gotta take one. And the big trick was, oh, I'll take, hey Don, you want one? Yeah, here you go. And then I take another one, and he'd go in and grab 2, and you know, so we just get as much as we could. And Don had these big bags, and he's in the middle of Sony's booth. The bag explodes and rips open, and T-shirts and crap and everything all over the middle of the booth. And I did one of these, and sorry, Don, you're on your own, you know. But but yeah, it was a crazy time. So we came up with the idea of, you know, from people saying, well, why don't you? Where can I see this stuff? And we approached the people at E3. We went up to their offices that year and introduced ourselves. And hey, we run a convention. Would you like us to do a historical exhibit at E3? And amazingly, they said yes. And back then, there was a place called Kentia Hall. Has anybody ever been to E3? I know Becky is, but so Kentia Hall in the early days that's where all the scrubs were, right down below. The big companies were in the 2 West and South Hall. Kentia Hall had all the small independent companies and everything. So they stuck us down there, and you know, we put on a display, and we had 2 arcade sections, 2 living rooms, all this. And actually, the first year we did the display, we won Best of Show award from like Xbox Magazine or some crazy thing. But this was the sign pointing, you know, we're not up there, we're down in a little side area. And we did it under the CGE name because there was no official museum or anything at the time. And this is like one of our first things. We had, of course, the 80s living room has always been a staple of what we do, and the arcade stuff in the back. And that was '04. '05, we started getting a little bit of sponsors from in television. The Coleco guys at the time were revitalizing that brand. And again, so this is a famous face here, Keith Robinson. He was the guy who bought the rights to the Intellivision years ago when they went out and kept it alive. So if you ever played like the Intellivision flashback or a collection of games on the Xbox, whatever, it's because he kept it going all these years. This is one of my favorite things. So E3 made the mistake of giving us space on what they call the concourse. So as you walked from the West Hall to the South Hall, they had these little booths that they had, little displays, and they told us we could have a couple of them to put stuff and whatever. So we came up with the idea. We had just found a stash of Starplex controllers. I don't know if you guys know what those are. They were made in the 80s, and they were basically an asteroids controller for the 2600. Wood grain finish and, you know, the layout for asteroids. And we had a whole bunch of them. So we filled up one of these cases and came up with some signage, new for 2005, unique 5-button design, right? And stylish marble wood finish, all for your best games, right? Auto blast, rapid fire. Behold, come witness firsthand the latest revolution in controller technology, right? And what's great is people would actually stop, because we kind of hang out up there and look, and they'd be like, oh, check this out. Like, no clue to the history of that. This is a product that was probably, 25 years old at least at the time. And then here we are pushing it. Come see us in Kentia Hall. So that was little things like that we love to do. Another booth picture. And let's see. There we go. And then, so we had a live band. 8-Bit Weapon was one of our friends that came and performed. And then we graduated to the Video Game History Museum. That was the first nonprofit that we formed, because people told us, you need to form a nonprofit. Maybe you can get some funding, and, it's easier for companies to sponsor you if it's a nonprofit. So we formed the Video Game History Museum, and this is them hoisting our banner up to the ceiling in E3. And again, so the Activision exhibit one year, we did a whole complete thing on Activision, the history of Activision. As you can see in the cabinet, we pretty much have every game at the time from Activision out. And behind, so you can't really see him, Don Rogers on the right. There's Gary Kitchen in the light shirt, me in the big block. And behind me is actually David Crane, one of the founders of Activision. And so those guys came out and were hanging out in the booth. And a great story this year was, just aside from it was one of our most fun exhibits, was the real Activision was down a few booths over. And at one point, this guy rolls up with this huge cart, because we had this big Activision sign. And he's like, I got your lunch. And I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, Activision. And man, I was this close to having a feast that day, but I said, no, we're just doing the historical. The real Activision is down that way. But we should have took his food, but I didn't want to get the guy in trouble either. So that was one of the more funs. And we had like a giant carpet graphics Pitfall box on the floor and lining the stuff. And then again, so now what happens is, at some point, E3 is doing a little bit of shrinkage. These smaller companies are being absorbed or whatever, and going by the wayside. There was no more need for Kentia Hall down below, and they actually moved us up into the main halls. And at one point, we had booths bigger than NVIDIA that we were filling with classic stuff. In fact, it got kind of hard to fill it every year, because they kept giving us more and more real estate, and like, how much can we bring? So this was actually kind of cool. Sony sponsored us this year because Pixels had come out, and we let them put a thing there. And again, this was one of my favorite exhibits. We actually had all 4 cars from the movie, in the Pixels movie on display. And there's Inky, and we got Clyde. I was back there, right? Yeah, there you go. So we had all 4 of them in the booth there on display, and it was real hard to not try to steal one of those, but I would have had a hard time crashing through stuff. Again, so this is one of the later ones that we did, and again, you know, a great thing. We were sponsored by Gearbox that year, still operating under Video Game History Museum. That Pac-Man has a great story. I really tried to find a video for you guys. Hasbro/Atari had given us some stuff, and it was this half of Pac-Man. It was just the front of Pac-Man, but you put your arms through it, and it had gloves on it, and I got to con my partner Sean into walking around E3 with it, but you couldn't see, so I had to kind of be his handler. And we're walking around, and we ran into Namco's Pac-Man. And for fun, they started fighting. Like, so you had two Pac-Man, you know, like this, right? Yeah. And separating, we were filming it. I couldn't find the video. I apologize. It was really, really funny. So, and again, now towards the end, before E3 stopped and shut down, we finally shifted over to the National Videogame Museum. By this time, the museum was open, and we still were doing E3 when E3 was still in business, you know. So that's our banner for that. And again, just different pictures of the booths and how we would just set stuff up. Even at E3, you know, 65,000 people, whatever it was, the stuff was just on tables. You could, you know, we had a lot of faith. We honestly, the community, the gaming community is really good. They were respectful for the most part. We didn't have anything stolen. So it was pretty amazing testament to, you know, of course, some really rare stuff was in the cases. We wouldn't just put that out, but again, memorabilia, you can see all kinds of beach balls and records and you name it on display. Computer Space and Pong, part of our exhibits. But yeah, we always had a lot of people. People would come up, and especially our couch. The funny thing is the couches were stuff we found like in Vegas. And even when we were doing our show and we had a couch, we'd run to the thrift store in Vegas and grab a you know, $25 for some old beat up looking couch. And like, I know for a fact there was silverfish living in them. One time, you know, like, and guys would come, oh, this is the best booth of the show. Forget Sony, Xbox. We love this booth. And I'd find guys sleeping on our couch, just decompressing. And I remember one year seeing a guy just completely laid out and, you know, unconscious on our couch. And then a few minutes later, I had turned around. He was gone. I assumed the silverfish ate him and he was gone. But I don't know, you know. Or the other one was a white cloud of like smoke would come out of when you sat on the couch. It was fun, but we have a nice newer couch at the museum. Don't worry, you can sit on it if you want.
But the silverfish cost extra.
They do always. Yeah. In 19, it got so crazy that we even conned E3 to give us our own meeting room. Because, you know, we had all these meetings, right? But, all right, take a meeting room, and as you can see, yeah, not much going on except my partner Sean trying to get out of the picture. Yeah, we really just used it as a place to hide, you know, from the show and grab a soda or lunch and whatever. I wish we had meetings, but no, we didn't. Let's see what else we got here. So DICE. So DICE is the genesis of how the museum came to be. What happened is, as we progressed through, you know, doing shows, E3, suddenly we're doing Game Developer Conference. We're doing South by Southwest, PAX East, PAX South, Kamikaze, all these shows all over, and we're doing 4 or 5 shows a year. And I take credit. I was the one who said, we need to go to DICE. DICE is a show that's unlike E3. It's all executives of these companies, the upper level management. And I said, you know, these are the guys, the decision makers that maybe can help us along the way to do something. So in 2012, we went to DICE. They gave us a little bit of area to do a classic lounge, as they called it. We had very little stuff with us. They only wanted key pieces. So, you know, we kind of went with that. And here's the DICE game lounge. And this is basically, we had 2 living rooms back to back. And then you can see just a few arcade, little, you know, maybe we had 24 items with us on display. What's interesting is, backtracking for a second, when we did E3 and these other shows, a guy would come up to me, hey, I love this, you know, how do we get you guys to come to Brazil? Okay, yeah, we'll do that. You know, you want to pay for it? Sure. How do we want you to come here or there? Every show was a half dozen offers. We want you to do, okay, give me a card, right? Well, after the show, nothing. Crickets, right? And you never heard from them again. So it was all talk. So he had become very jaded in the sense of what's going on, you know, with this. So, and again, keep in mind, we're all kind of classic guys at the time. Uh, I certainly didn't know modern stuff. So the gentleman sitting on the right on the couch with the glasses, his name is Randy Pitchford. Now he's the head of Gearbox Software, and if you know their games, Borderlands is their big franchise, and they've done Homeworld, and they've tons of games. Well, I don't know Borderlands, I don't know anything, and Randy came up to me at the show, and you know, I can say this because I consider him a good friend. He laughs at it too. You know, it's a kind of a nerdy looking guy. He comes up and he's showing me on his phone, hey, you know, in my office at work, I got this and that, and I'll be honest, I was kind of an asshole. Yeah, I was like, yeah, that's nice, you know, because I had heard this 100 times, right? And then I see him being interviewed by G4, and you know, the other people are coming through. Tim Sweeney, you know, all these other guys that we're starting to realize, wait a minute, these are important guys, right? So anyway, the story goes, after the show, we had my two partners and I decided we'll each email one person and ask them if they can be interested in helping with the museum or get something going. So of course I took Randy because I had talked to him, and I forget, Joe was doing Tim and another guy. Well, those two cowards didn't even send their emails. All right, so I was the only one who sent the email, and then I was like, "Hey, buddy, remember we met at the show and we were talking?" But I'll tell you what, this guy was the most genuine guy I've ever met in my life. He actually followed through. And he's the reason that there's a National Videogame Museum in Frisco, Texas. So Gearbox was at the time moving their office from Plano to Frisco. They were building a new building in Frisco Square for their studio. Randy flew us down. He put us up. He used to do a Gearbox Community Day down at Gillies in Dallas. They would do charity auctions. They would do charity poker tournaments. And for 2 years, he basically, you know, had helped us talk with the city because, hey, we're not museum guys. Maybe we are more so now, but at the time we weren't. We're just three schlubs who like classic gaming, right? We wanted to know, you know, our thing with getting into gaming was never about money or fame, or it was just we wanted to know, like, hey, why didn't this game come out? Or what happened to this company? Why did they go out of business? Who wrote this game, right? So it was just a quest for information that we were always trying to find out. And that's kind of led us around and what we wanted to ultimately do. So anyway, Randy was really the motivator. He had the ear of the city. Hey, give these guys a shot, you know. And the city agreed to take a chance on us. They spent $1.3 million to build out the Frisco Discovery Center, which at the time was, they used to build rockets there. And it was, I'll show you, as we get to the slide here, the museum build. So you guys probably, some of the very few people are going to get to see these pictures because we've never really posted them. That's the Discovery Center back in probably 2012. We're nowhere to be seen. And then when we started opening, we had our sign up there. And that's the museum. So they used to build rockets in this building back in the day. And this big warehouse area, it's about 10,000 square feet, was used like, it's very art-centered. So if they had an art exhibition where they would have sculptures or whatever, they would use part of the space. Or if they used to do like, I don't even know what the word is, like little fairs, like baby fair, all baby clothes, you know, and they would set up vendors and to sell stuff. But yeah, it's just a giant, high ceilings and everything. So the city spent that money to basically renovate this and put in, you know, obviously update the utilities, put in the walls in between the exhibits. They built additional parking outside. So, and then we basically had to come up and do the rest. This is an interesting layout. So over the 2 years that it took us from the time we agreed to do this in 2014 to the time we opened in 2016, it was a long process. So you can see, if you've ever been to the museum, hopefully some of you have made it. This is a little bit different than the original. What it actually exists. You notice the living room and bedroom are down here. Third party is actually now where that is. We had sponsors. I don't know what sponsors was going to be. Tools and games is actually up by PC computers. That came around to this side. Controllers is where third party is. So you can see it's a totally different layout. A Ralph Bear, I don't know what we were doing with Ralph Bear up top there. The sound is actually where the living room and bedroom ended up being. So yeah, this is one of the first early incarnations of what we thought we could lay out in the museum. My partner Sean up on the ladder. So we hired a company called White Oak Associates. White Oak said they're a numbers company and they do projections, and we had to have that for the city. And they said, hey, it's going to cost about $50 million. Oh, excuse me, $10 million to build this, what you're wanting to build. And it's going to be, you're going to have your first year, you're going to have this huge amount of visitors, and then it's going to kind of taper off, right? Well, we always like to buck the trend. And we don't believe that, and it wasn't, it didn't cost us 10 million. But the other fact was, it was very hands-on from our years of running a show and doing everything ourselves. So, every exhibit in the museum probably has 2 Cat 5s to it. We ran those ourselves. We weren't going to pay a company. Or, the museum company that we did hire to build our exhibits. Oh yeah, we'll give you a monitor here, a nice big monitor that'll cost $2,000. Nah, leave that off. We'll go to Best Buy and buy it for $600 and mount it ourselves, So it was a lot of that type of really penny pinching, trying to get things done cheaper, conning people. I had no problem saying, hey, come on, let's do this. Give us a better price. Your work will be on display for everyone to see. It'll generate a lot of business. I try anything. But anyway, so we're mounting speakers in the lobby there. And we ran all the Cat 5 and anything we could do ourselves, we did. They say the best things happen when you're sitting around drunk. And my partners and I were sitting around. We were taking a lot of heat from the city because it was taking so long. And it wasn't really our fault. Keep in mind, none of us lived there initially. I was in New York, and my partner Joe was in New Jersey, and Sean was in Chicago. So Joe actually moved with his wife to Frisco for about 1.5 years to be our feet on the street and get the place up and running. And he was overseeing the build and everything. But we were, trying to come up with stage signs and names for exhibits. Initially, the Begin, where Pong was called Prehistoric. Like, we had all these crazy names. And so one night we were sitting around drinking quite a bit. And we just, boom, started coming to us, and we started writing it down, Begin, timeline, like one word for every exhibit that we could, and then the sign, what we would have on that sign to indicate what was, the basis of that, listen, of course, we have an ear. And we had a guy actually custom make the signs by hand, and so it was a lot of fun, to come up with that. And, Sanctuary was the bedroom, Respect Wall was the Rubik's Cube, bonus play, and of course the gift shop spend, right? So, and this is one of our missed dates, coming December 26th, day after Christmas 2015, we're going to open the doors, and no, we didn't. So, again, what happened is the city was really starting to get on our case about opening up. We were nowhere near ready. The museum firm that we hired, because they weren't making a ton of money on us and they had much bigger clients, we got pushed to the back. And we still had payments to make to them, and we're making the payments, but they're not doing anything. So it got to a point where we actually had to start withholding payments unless they get going with it. And eventually we got it. And so that was our big drinking revelation. We had to pick a date. So Saturday was April 2nd. So we're going to open up April 2nd. No fooling. Right? So no, April 1st. So, and here's more pictures. So you can see this is all just basic, just walls and glass cases as we started to fill stuff in. And, it changed 100 times. That's the Flexhibit area, which actually ended up having more cases. That's the third-party wall where we wanted to recreate that Parker Brothers ad with all the video games on different systems going in. One of my favorites, there's Anna Terry was the woman who painted that entire wall by hand. And as you can see, we put the TVs and the counter up first. Not the stools, they were tucked underneath. But so when she had to get up top above that, she actually was up on a scaffold, like leaning out, painting, like looking at her phone and everything. Again, her realism, the amount of realism and detail is just phenomenal. She is absolutely one of the most amazing artists that we ever met. And so early design for the arcade. What's interesting is, again, showing you how things changed over time. So the original arcade was going to have this Pac-Man ceiling and a wall thing there, and that would be like a video wall of something happening, and again, did not happen. This is one of our artists painted. This is what's currently in the museum up top, the giant centipede that's breaking out of the walls. But as a little interesting fact, a little trivia, there is still the outline of the maze. You can't see it because it's very dark in there, but if you look closely, you'll see the chalk outlines still there of what we were originally going to do for the maze, and again, it's one of those things that we ran out of time and it just, money, and it was just a whole, let's get it going. We got to get open. The Ralph Bear, if you guys, right now is Keith Robinson, is our respect wall. So that's actually the original picture that was up there. It's made out of 660 Rubik's Cubes. So the professor at SMU created this program to pixelize actual images, and his students came out and they actually went in and solved the cubes. They didn't cheat. They laid them out, and you can see them here. And they made this wood frame and they stacked the cubes to create the image of Ralph, when he passed away. So that's a lot different from what's currently is the living room of the National Videogame Museum. Again, Joe was on site. We were flying by the seat of our pants. The people we hired to design this came up with this. And I literally looked in the cameras one day because we all had remote access to all the cameras. And I jumped on the phone. I'm like, we got to fire these people because what the hell is that, right? And that's also actually where the bedroom is now. So they had it on the other side. But that was the original living room, pink. I don't know what they were thinking. But anyway, so and now when we repainted it and got a little furniture for the 80s bedroom, it looks a lot better, right? Again, artist. So that wall was done by a guy named Oliver Wade, and he was actually in the industry. He worked on Spyro and Ratchet and Clank, and he painted that whole wall, made this cool thing. We have some stuff on the doors so they look like warp pipes, but you can see it's in progress. Without all the characters that he went. And what's interesting with Oliver is that he actually kind of, if you look closely, I might have a close-up, it's actually almost like graph paper. Like he actually drew the blocks like pixels. You can see. And then just painted, off his original design of drawing those and imagine measuring those, I can't even imagine these guys. Our controller wall, again, done in a Galaga theme. So the squadrons of controllers coming down and as initial paint on that. This is the 80s store. So we have that recreation of a video game store from the 80s. And that's before anything got going. And then we have the artists starting to paint. They even projected, they all use different techniques. These guys projected an image and then painted with it, showing the crash and then the rise of computers. And here's some of the early artwork that they were doing. And then the rise. That's more like what it is today. But even like the blue boxes are different from kind of what they are. Just early shot of the gift shop before we had anything going. The handheld room. So we have our mascot, which is Blip, this big guy reaching out. You actually can't see his arms because now they're covered by the displays, but that's what it looks like underneath. Online gaming was one of our earliest exhibits that never quite worked the way we wanted to. Some of you may have got there, but we basically had two setups that you could simulate speed. So what lights would travel from one side to another as you sent a message or took a picture or whatever, and it was basically 300 baud, and the light went like this, nice and slow. Or we had like 5 different speeds, and it had a handle like a shifter that you could do. And but today, now that actually we just changed that into a Pokemon exhibit about 3 weeks ago, so it's gone through a few iterations, just because we didn't feel that was really a practical use. In fact, we do still have 2 terminals at opposite ends, and now there's a tube that goes the length of the museum, which is kind of cool, except now I have kids running after the light to the other side, to see where it goes. This is our giant Pong wall. I don't know, the guy on the right there, putting together some cases or something, but this is before the frame of the TV went up on the Pong. And there's after, with Pong in front. Randy's office. So we're running out of time. We're running out of money. We need to fill this space with something. We come up with the idea of recreating Randy Pitchford's office, because we wanted, we justified it by saying, okay, it's not interactive, but we're going to show what a professional game developer's office has in it, what inspires him to be creative. And we even had a cutout of Randy, full-size cutout in the office that used to stand in there, and we had actually, you couldn't walk into it. This is before the railing was up, and in fact we used that cutout for years just to scare people. We'd put it on. But this was an early version of that. That's actually now our VR exhibit that we've created, and as with the bars, so when you create an exhibit, you got to hire companies, right? And we decided we want to change to a VR exhibit. Well, this guy, obviously, this was his concept for the VR exhibit. Obviously not, looks more like a romper room school or a daycare or something. He didn't quite get it, so, but this is one of the failed proposals for the VR. This was done by the guy who actually built the VR. You can see a little more modern, cool looking, but still different in the sense, with that weird thing in the middle. And that's more like what the VR actually looks like today, with the hexagons, the goggles. We have a thing on the set. We put a battle zone. What's interesting is we created a chair that you sit in for VR, which is actually broken at the moment, but the public is brutal. I just say. But this original design, if you look, there's 3 helmets that you would actually just stand there and have this helmet that would lower. There was the idea. And then we realized, well, people are going to be walking and moving, and we kind of don't want that, so people get hurt. So then we came up with the idea to make them sit down, and that way they're kind of locked in and not moving around. Our bathrooms. This guy was just incredible. He created the final scene of Dragon's Lair and made our restrooms, we couldn't have normal restrooms. Our original idea for the restrooms was that, if you were standing at the urinal, we would have Master Chief at the wall next to you going like this. But we figured that might be a little rough, people might not appreciate that. So we went with this Dragon's Lair theme. And what's interesting, if you've been to the museum and seen it, it is a recreation of the final scene of the game. He actually created it with spray paint. You can see the cans on the bottom there. So other than the princess and Dirk, the hero, and the dragon, everything else was done in spray paint. And he was amazing to watch. He had cutouts for the coins, and he would spray and move them and stack them. And, here's another view of his work. Just we were really fortunate with the guys that we hired, the guys and the girls that were just amazing artists. This is the guy putting together our lobby sculpture. That's this media wall that we have. All systems painted gold, and he is the creator. It was actually donated by Randy. He was a friend of Randy's, and he created that. And so when you come to the museum, you'll see everything showing on there, from old game commercials to pictures of arcades or collections or gameplay. You name it, it's up there. MTV videos back when they played music. It's all there. One of our early, when we opened, we had a sound exhibit. This has become the rotate exhibit where we change it pretty much every year. We've done Sega Channel. We've done an Alien-themed game. A guy who was really into Alien. We've done Donkey Kong Country. And right now we have Native American in there. And this one will hopefully I don't want to be optimistic. I keep trying to convince myself it'll be by the end of the month. More likely by the middle of next month or end of next month. This is going to be a TurboGrafx exhibit with PC Engine stuff. So we have a lot of that staged already. We just have to get the background done. But the original concept was there was 3 monitors and 3 systems, and it was to show the importance of sound in games. And so the first one, you would play a game without sound. Then you would just listen to the sound, and then you'd put them together, right? And again, it was great in concept, but it never really worked the way we wanted it to. It was hard to find games that were appropriate because we wanted to change them. So yeah, we eventually just scrapped that. This is the timeline of video games before there's anything there. This was our Minecraft exhibit, which is what we call tools. It's all about creating games and sound and things like that. But this was painted with a Minecraft theme. There's our artist, Denise, painting the upper blocks that look like different Minecraft blocks. Oh, you get back. Yeah, you can see more there. And of course, we have this giant crane dropping a block. And that's our original Mario sculpture. So that was actually created by a guy in Frisco. He created out of what he called hardened foam. And the guy was just super talented to create that. The issue is, of course, people felt the need to climb on it. And I actually have pictures of 4 kids on this statue. One is sitting up on Mario's head. One is standing on his right arm. And the other 2 are hanging off the left side. And that's why Mario has all cracks and has now been retired to our warehouse. And we have a new statue. But as I said, the public can be brutal. So, Easter eggs. There's Easter eggs all throughout the museum. If you didn't know, there's little things you can find. And I can't tell you all of them. But if you for instance, if you were over in the Minecraft area and you looked up in the crane, you'll see there's a creeper up there that's operating the crane. There's a way to make that message pop up on our timeline. Konami code. Yeah, so there's all different things that you can do and find throughout the museum if you want to spend the time and dig around. And a lot of them are very subtle. If you're in the handheld room and you look up, you'll see there's a little asteroid ship on the ceiling that's shooting over at our sprinkler. Just things like that we've hidden throughout. There is a hidden buried ET cartridge in the museum, just to let you know. So in the future, when people excavate or whatever, I don't know, they'll find it, but it's hidden somewhere in the museum. So 2.0. Am I all right on time? Okay. We're almost to the end now. So we want to talk about the next version of the museum. So the original vision of the museum, we had 56 exhibits in our heads laid out on paper, what they were going to be, different themes. It was 50,000 square feet, not 10, okay? Things like a research library where people could come and visit the museum and, maybe look at old magazines, or they want to look up source code for an old game that we might have, right? So it was going to be this whole academic side. Unfortunately, with only 10,000 square feet, we really had to focus on how do we keep the doors open and what's the most appealing. And I've told people I've talked over the weekend, I'm a huge Atari guy. We have prototypes and stuff. I would love to make Atari computer prototype wall, but I can't because nobody would care. You guys might, but the general public wouldn't. So you really have to find that balance. And what we tried to do is the person coming in, they go into the arcade. You see it all the time. Galaga and Miss Pac-Man, right? Well, what about Robotron? What about Gorf, like Berserk? They get, least amount of play because people don't know that. That's not their memory. So, there is a lot of nostalgia, and we do have a lot of stuff that they remember. Oh, this was my bedroom with the NES, and okay, great. But there's so much more. So again, we try to find that balance that we'd also have items that people who are gamers would come in and go, holy crap, that's, and appreciate, while the general public probably wouldn't. 2.0 was an interesting story. Before we even opened, the building itself has a whole section, which is now the Frisco Library. It's 100,000 square feet. And it was run by, or in there was, the city owns the entire building. But that particular thing was being used by a company called GEA that made like food packaging and stuff like that. And the thing was, hey, they're going to leave in a couple of years. Let's incubate, get this, prove it that it's a workable concept. And then when they leave, we'll take another 50,000, right? And we'll expand and have our original vision. Well, the Frisco city decided, we need to put our newest library, the greatest library ever built, in this 100,000 square feet. And we'll build a second mezzanine, so it's 150,000 square feet library. So they basically, there's other tenants in the building. There's a science museum, there's a railroad museum, there's a whole arts thing. There's really no space left. So we're kind of in a bind because we're bursting at the seams. Right now, we maintain 3,000 foot outside warehouse, climate controlled, off site. And, the space that we have, we probably only have 15 to 20% of the collection on display. And I always feel bad. People donate stuff and they're like, oh, put up a cart. Yeah, we will eventually, but don't expect to donate something and it's going to be right on display because it's only so much space. And I think that's pretty standard from, talking to other museums. There's only a fraction is actually ever on display. But what's interesting, so now we're kind of in a spot, how do we get to the next level of making this Disney of video games where people can come? And we don't have $30 million to build a building. So we're kind of in that in-between space. The city, as much as we bring to the city, they can't justify it to the people of Frisco. Oh, we're going to build these guys a museum, even though we're a nonprofit. It's just not doable. So we're trying to we have a couple options we're looking at to try and keep taking this. And we've been talking for years. We'll probably be talking for a few more years. But I do have some concepts because we have been talking for so long. And let's see. Oh, let me get back here. So one of the ideas was to have where you would actually walk into a video game system and, have all interactive things, giant controllers and all this cool stuff there. So again, we had some artists over the years who have worked with us to design concepts of what could be the library of video games, and you'd be able to check out, or not so check out, but come in and view stuff. One of the other ideas is that you might be able to play pretty much every video game or any video game that was ever made. We'd have systems set up that you could take a game and go get to play it or whatever. Some maker rooms, not in the traditional sense, but maybe you need to back up a chip or an EEPROM, or maybe you need to solder a kit, or, any those types of small work rooms that we would have available for people. This is another part of the concept of, these giant walking into a system thing. And that's a concept of what the museum, we pitched to the city of what it would look like, a 2.0 version of the museum. There is a piece of land out front on the tollway that's not being used, but again, we come to the issue of not having $30 million to build that. So, again, these were just put together by an architectural firm for us. There's the night view, which I actually like better. But same picture, but very cool, pixelized type front. There's our get sued by Mario wall, by Nintendo. Yeah, I don't know why they thought that was a good idea. I mean, I'm pretty sure we'd get sued for the Pac-Man too, but they wanted to do that. And that's supposed to be like a lenticular wall where if you look from one direction, you'll see one image, and from the other way, you would see something else. And that would be instant out of business when it comes to Nintendo. And this was a different concept they had come up with, more of a side entrance, and so the red arches, which, and a multi-purpose space was one of our original concept things, to have this space that we could do things like an esports tournament, or we could, host a convention, or, pretty much anything we wanted to do. Because that's one of the biggest issues we have now, is we have companies come to us. I've had Amazon come to me, hey, we want to do an event for 1,000 people. All right, well, have fun. I don't know where you're going, but it's not here. Yeah. And we've turned away groups, 800, 1,000, whatever. There's no space in the building to do that. And it's a shame because obviously the idea is you make it where it's attached to the museum. They can spend time in the museum, back and forth, whatever. But again, so this was one of the concepts also. And that's pretty much it. I happy to take some questions. If you want to start a museum, don't. I can tell you stories, but yeah, go ahead.
So there's a certain history of video games starting maybe with the Magnum Odyssey.
Right.
Are you going to have endpoints, or are you going to continue to move the bar as new games are created every year?
Yeah.
What is the
stopping
point? Or are you continuing?
Well, we always go back one generation. So right now, to us, technically, PS4 is part of the museum, right? You won't find a PS4, maybe on display, but we don't really focus too much on those newer generations. We do have stuff for them, but again, we kind of stay one generation behind when it comes to that. And the problem, of course, now is
Space.
Right. Well, space, and how do you preserve these games, right? My kids, I'm going to download this. No. Go to GameStop and buy it. Why are you downloading? You don't own it. I don't want to get into that whole battle. Physical media is the way to go, especially from a preservation point, because look at Flappy Bird years ago, right? When that came out, people were selling phones that had Flappy Bird for $500, whatever, $1,000 just so people could play that, because that's the only place it existed now. So much of this online stuff just takes it out of a preservation point of view for the future generations. We'll never know because there's no way to get that game, or if you have the game, it doesn't even run because it has to use their servers, right? And they've shut them down.
Is that the Nintendo Wii? Did that happen with the Nintendo Wii? They shut down and they went.
Yeah, I can't keep up on some of that stuff. Was it
Microsoft game?
Yeah.
They shut it down, and then they said you're not available to anybody.
Right. Now there's movements out there where people have recreated servers, but that's really hard to do unless you have some kind of access to the games and the code or whatever to figure out how they were doing it. So it's tough.
Also, now a lot of modern games, when you buy them on Blu-ray or DVD, it's not the game. You put it in your machine, and the machine says, "Oh, we got it," but now I got to
download it, right? Or a download code or whatever. Yeah.
So therefore, let's say 20 years from now, I can pull out a Blu-ray of a Sony PlayStation 4 game. I put it in my machine. It says, "Oh, can't communicate."
Can't communicate. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. And I get the whole logic of electronic games. We could get into a whole discussion on that, but you shouldn't be paying $50, $60 for a downloadable game. It costs, it's one thing they have to make packaging, they have distributors, they have to get in stores and whatever. But hey, give us a break, Maybe it's $30, or, not 60, or, there's no manufacturing cost. You slam it on a server, people download it, and it costs you a fraction of what but it's the same price, right?
Well, there's one thing I also discovered just recently was the fact that if you buy games on Steam, you can't transfer the ownership to someone else. So they're like, I have a collection of games from my late wife.
Sure.
That I now have to keep her account.
You have to keep her
play those games.
Absolutely.
Just transferring over to my account.
No, that's crazy.
Same story.
It is crazy. Anybody else have questions? Yeah.
Question: say when you guys do, if you guys do consider a remodel, would you guys be open to do a barcade?
To a what?
A barcade?
I don't like the term barcade. Well, so the problem is this, and again, my personal opinion, a barcade is somebody who just wants to make money off of old arcade machines. And I kind of differentiate that. I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but, locally here, like we have a group called Free Play in the Dallas area. And while the owner of Free Play is maybe not the most loved person in the world, he's the truest person when it comes to passion for video games. So, you go to Free Play and the machines are well taken care of. It's important that they're all original. You can buy a beer. It's not $10 for a beer. It's, reasonable, $3, $4. You get food. The food's good. So I hate to generalize like that, but in my head, barcades are people who are just looking to capitalize on, that type of thing. So I don't like to use that word barcade, but there's obviously two different schools of thought. We probably wouldn't have a barcade. For us, it would be more likely to do events where we would have alcohol and adults, date night, things like that. And we have done some in the past. We had a James Bond night a few years ago. COVID kind of shut that down of doing events, and unfortunately, we really haven't gotten back into that. But I would love to bring that back. 80s night, 90s night, whatever. We did
So
two or
say you
three.
guys do something kind of like that.
Yeah,
Remember like old school Dr. Mario, how it was like kind of like on a tabletop?
sure.
You could just convert that into your bar tabletop. So while you're drinking your beer, you got Dr. Mario or Pac-Man right there.
Yeah, no, I get it. There's also a place right near us called, if you guys don't know it, called Nerdvana. So Nerdvana is a restaurant that has video games at every table. And actually, if you show them your receipt from the museum or a membership card or whatever, they'll give you 10% off your bill, except for the alcohol. Right? So, anybody else? Yeah.
Do you have a system or a program for volunteers?
Yeah.
Something you have to do.
So that's always a touchy one too. We don't have a lot of volunteers because, and again, maybe it's something with me. I feel odd. People will often ask about volunteering, and we'll send them a form to fill out. And well, why do you want to volunteer? And 3 minutes, okay. Oh, I love video games. I want to learn more about that type of thing. But when the reality is they come in, I'm like, here, go clean. Like it's. I think often people feel like it's a gateway into the industry or to get involved, and unfortunately, it really isn't. It's more just go play, test the controllers, make sure they're working, things like that.
Yeah, the true spirit of a volunteer, though, they're there to help.
Yeah.
Maybe you need them.
Well, I'll say this: we have started giving them projects and stuff to try and get them little side projects, so it's not just cleaning. And we actually have 3 volunteers right now, which is more than we've had for a while. Anybody else? Yep.
You mentioned COVID. I was just curious if what struggles you had.
Yeah. So COVID was tricky because obviously we were shut down for 3 months, March 15th to June 15th. We were okay financially. That wasn't the issue. But of course, opening up was a whole different, nobody wanted to come. And, when you have something where, as it is on a daily basis, and a Saturday, you have 900 people coming in and they're touching, and kids love to sneeze and draw on their snot on my thing. It's some of the stuff I see is disgusting. So, it was a whole extra level of cleaning. We did take precautions. Obviously, our employees were masked up, and we had some guards that we put up. We split our arcade. So our party room, we have a small party room that we can hold 40 people, whatever. And we stopped doing birthday parties, and we took half of the arcade and moved it into that and had the machines spaced out so that we could try to, attract people where they wouldn't feel uncomfortable and getting back in. So that's really it. Okay, last thing. Oh.
I'm sorry if you covered this at the beginning. I walked in a little late. So assuming you guys were not trust fund babies, how did you fund this from the outside? What were your day jobs while you?
Okay, so my partner Joe worked for a medical company, but by the time we had opened, he had left and started his own video game store in New Jersey. My partner Sean has always worked for himself. He owned a Subway and then ended up opening a video game store. So both of them ran video game stores, which obviously helped a little with collecting stuff. I worked for Verizon in New York for 26 years. So it was an interesting thing. My team, if you guys, down here is Frontier, they sold it to, but their Fios network, the fiber optic to the home, my team built that out. And I had about 28 guys working for me. So it got real interesting when we were trying to open the museum, because we were I'd fly down for a weekend, and we were constantly flying in and out. Money-wise, some of it was out of our pocket, but the problem at this time, well, that's the problem, but Randy Pitchford, I don't know if you were here when I talked about Randy, he kind of helped with that. Now, I'm not saying he flew us in every weekend to work on the museum, but in between, fundraising-wise, he was the one who really helped with that, like doing charity events for us and different things like that. And he was generous. And the city did give us 2 matching grants of 100,000 each. So we fundraised that amount, and they matched it. And so really, that's really where it came from. So when they talk about the White Oak Company saying it would take $10 million to build this, and we right away okay. We built it for about $500,000, So, but again, a lot of us just doing stuff ourselves. Obviously we knew we couldn't build exhibits, but we hired a firm to design the exhibits, and then we subcontracted some of the exhibits to a smaller company that was cheaper and things like. So a lot of that type of stuff just to get it going. I know we're probably cut already, but that's fine. Anybody else? Yeah.
You talked about the restrooms in the museum.
Yeah.
It reminded me about in like 8 years ago, David Buster's had urinal games where you video games with the urinal.
We already have that. Every time I walk in, the floor is covered in pee. Yeah. Trust me, it's not fun after late on a Saturday, and it's
Would it be good to have preserved stuff like that, or
preserved pee. Yeah. No, that's probably something we wouldn't consider. No, I don't think so. But all right, anybody else? Well, I appreciate you guys have been a great audience. If you haven't got one of these, I found a box of them. You're welcome to grab. This is the last official Classic Gaming Expo that we did. There was one in 2014 that we were advisors on. Someone else took it over, and then that was kind of the end of it after that. But feel free to grab one, and thanks for being a great audience. Yeah, appreciate it.